I'm Michael Alley, and I'm an architect. And my topic is a little bit odd. It's cultivating a creative culture on the island of misfit toys. And especially compared to these gentlemen, clearly I am a misfit toy, because these guys are obviously clearly outstanding in their fields. But architecture is an interesting profession. It's a fascinating profession because we are really shaping buildings that ultimately will shape people, the way they think, the way they behave, the way they do their work. And we spend more than 90% of our lives in a building. And so our practice is really important. The other thing about architecture, though, is it's a very public art form. Our job really is to facilitate other people's vision on many levels. So whether it's an owner that has very specific needs and very usually a limited budget but high aspirations, or a neighbor or concerned citizen that might oppose change just from the virtue that change is hard and change is scary, or contractors or subcontractors, material suppliers. It's a very, very collaborative process to put buildings together. And to tell you the truth, I kind of get uncomfortable when I think, or when I'm referred to as a leader. We've built a nice company and that sort of thing, but I really think of myself more as a collaborator, a strategic thinker, a coach, a practical joker, and those are the things that really kind of fuel what I do. And but this is a leadership conference, so I guess I have to kind of speak to leadership, but I want to begin by asking the question, what happens when there is no leader? What kind of organization can develop with no leader? And I think it's really interesting. Bees are amazing architects. The things that they do have inspired designers, architects, engineers, scientists for centuries, really. And some of the most interesting innovations, even some of the hive technology, as we look at the future for the power grid, is taken from the way hives work and the way bees function. And so there are numerous things, and yet there is no leader. And these are all creatures with microscopic brains, and yet they orchestrate their efforts so beautifully. If you take a little pile of dirt and about a week's worth of time, ants will build the most amazing buildings. They're like high-rises below the ground, and they're complicated, and they serve all these different purposes, and yet there is no architect, there's no blueprint. So how does this group of really almost brainless creatures perform such amazing things? This particular species of ant is really interesting because the fire ant will actually build bridges by connecting their bodies together. So when they're on foraging runs, they will leap from branch to branch or across deep crevasses by building bridges out of their own bodies. And they've even been known to connect their bodies together to create little bridges or little flotillas. So if a rain comes and a flood comes, they just float down the river and are protected. They protect one another. You've probably all seen Starlings, how beautiful the ballet that they function in the sky is. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Just imagine trying to choreograph what they do with thousands of participants on 3 dimensions. It's not a horizontal 2-dimensional thing, but they're going vertically. And how does that happen? Well, these are really amazing feats, and they're done through sort of complex, decentralized systems, the interactions of thousands of individuals. So, I have to ask the question, how do so many very microscopically brained creatures do such amazing architecture? And the first thing you're probably thinking is that a prerequisite for being an architect is a microscopic brain. And I wouldn't argue with that necessarily, but no, it's really amazing to think about that. It's also sort of, when you look at the human construct, virtually nearly every organization looks something like this. Hierarchy of construction. And this is true from a Fortune 500 company down to your sort of local garden. This is where people find comfort in sort of organizing themselves. And there are good reasons, because the command and control structure, I'm just so pleased that our military has a specific command and control. And so if the objective of the organization is to execute a plan that comes from the top, that is a fantastically efficient organization. But there's another type of organization that maybe is helpful in the creative endeavors. And so what we've been looking at is a flattened organization. And so we looked at how it works in the insect world and in the natural world, but is there any way to run a business like that? And I would sort of venture to say that what we've found is a flatter organization is really an excellent way to run a creative business, where the product that you're really generating are unprecedented solutions and creative, imaginative ideas. So a few years ago, I was asked to speak at the Coneco Creative Leadership Symposium about our firm and the kind of peculiar management style that we have, and it kind of threw me into a peculiar thought process, because I hadn't really stopped to think about it. I mean, we've been doing this for about 30 years now, and we've grown from 3 guys in our spare bedroom to a 50-person firm, and so it really was complicated to think how we are structured, but this really is probably the best diagram for how we're structured. We're a dynamic network, and it's a very interesting process where everyone is considered a leader and everyone is a follower. And we've cultivated a creative structure on the island of misfit toys by using these 7 components. So safety, a flat structure, a gifting culture, empowerment, shared knowledge, diversity, and a unique employee profile. The thing, you can't be creative if you're fearful. I mean, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of need, safety is one of the very most basic. And so you have to create an environment where people feel safe. The flattened structure, I think, is terrible for egos, but great for ideas, because the ideas can percolate up from anywhere. Empowerment is about really addressing intrinsic values more than extrinsic values. And there's some really interesting studies about how extrinsic values like money and grades and those sorts of things actually have a depressive effect on creative energy. And it's really fascinating to look at that. But what intrinsic motivators are autonomy, mastery, and purpose, which is what you were talking about in terms of people embracing purpose. A gifting culture is basically that we give more than we take. And who wouldn't want to be in a situation where you're out giving one another? And this only happens because there's a flattened hierarchy, and you're not worried about someone climbing past you because you really want their success. Shared knowledge, again, knowledge is power. And when you have a flattened organization, people freely share knowledge and invite people in, and that's a very key thing. Seeking diversity is very important. You have to know what you're asking for, because it can also create division, and you have to press into those things as well. And then a unique employee profile, we call it the T-shaped model. I borrowed this from Valve Software, a really interesting organization. But the idea is that you have a wide breadth of knowledge, but a deep specialty that you can bring, and that's really important for a collaborative situation. So the Island of Misfit Toys really represents what we've built around our 55-person firm. We have some 40 additional creatives that work in our studio with us, and it's really fascinating to see what we can accomplish when we all work together. And they are everything from a branding agency to a past planning director to visual artists and textile artists. So it's always a very interesting day to come into work and see who's there. So that is how we've built this creative culture by this flattened organization, and it's drawing these other creatives around us, and I have to say it's the most exciting thing that we do. So thank you.